They called him the toughest cop in the city, the kind of man who never smiled, never hesitated, and never lost control. His name was Detective Cole Rayner, a legend in the force, the man every rookie wanted to impress and every criminal feared. And then there was me, the rookie who didn't belong. Too soft-spoken, too careful, too different. I told myself I'd keep my head down, follow orders, and stay invisible. But the first time Cole looked at me, it was like he saw straight through every layer I'd built to survive. He was supposed to be my mentor. He wasn't supposed to make me feel this, but one night on patrol, one moment when everything went wrong, the toughest cop in the city let me see the man behind the armor. And what happened after that, no one at the station could ever know. If you've ever fallen for someone you weren't supposed to, this story will stay with you. Stay until the end, because sometimes even the strongest walls are built to be broken. The first time I saw Detective Cole Rayner, I understood why everyone at the precinct called him the Wall. He stood at the front of the briefing room, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes sharp enough to cut through glass. His presence alone silenced the chatter. He wasn't the kind of man who needed to raise his voice. The weight of his gaze did that for him. It was my first week on the job. I was 24, fresh out of the academy, still trying to figure out where to park without getting yelled at. The captain had paired me with Rayner for my first patrol rotation. Nobody envied me. Rookie, someone whispered behind me. Hope you like being ignored. When the meeting ended, Rayner barked orders at a few officers, then turned toward me. He looked me up and down once, from my polished boots to my nervous posture, and I swear that moment lasted hours. "You Collins?" he asked, his voice low and rough like gravel dragged across asphalt. "Yes, sir," he smirked faintly. "Don't sir me. I'm not your drill instructor. Get your gear. We leave in 10, and just like that he walked away. I spent the first few hours trying not to breathe too loud. The city outside was alive. Sirens echoing through narrow streets, neon lights flickering over puddles, the hum of engines and chaos. Inside the patrol car, though, it was just the two of us, and the sound of the radio crackling softly. Rayner drove like he lived, precise, efficient, no wasted motion. Every few minutes he'd glance at me, as if waiting for me to mess up. "You always this quiet?" he asked finally, not looking away from the road. "Trying not to say the wrong thing," I admitted. "Wrong thing would be worse than silence," he said. Then after a pause, "But silence can be suspicious too." I wasn't sure if that was advice or a warning. We stopped by a diner after midnight for coffee. The waitress greeted him like she'd known him for years. "Detective Rayner," she said with a grin. "Same order?" He nodded. "And whatever he wants," he added, gesturing to me. That small act, including me in his world even for a second, felt heavier than it should have. When she walked away, I asked, "You come here often?" "Used to," he said. "Not so much anymore." I waited for him to explain, but he didn't. Later that night, we responded to a call about a break-in at an old apartment complex. The building was half abandoned, walls cracked and littered with graffiti. We split up to clear each floor. I was nervous, my pulse drumming in my ears, the flashlight shaking in my grip. Halfway through the third floor, I heard glass shatter behind one of the doors. I froze. "Detective?" I whispered into the radio. No answer. "Detective Rayner, do you copy?" Still nothing. I drew my gun, my training fighting with the panic rising in my throat. Then the door burst open. I nearly fired. It was Rayner. He moved fast, grabbing my wrist and pushing the barrel toward the floor. "Easy," he growled. "You want to shoot me on your first week?" My chest was heaving. "You weren't answering the radio." His eyes softened slightly. "Next time, wait for confirmation before you kick down a door." I nodded, still shaken. He held my gaze for a moment, long enough that I forgot to breathe, then let go of my wrist. His hand lingered for half a second longer than it needed to. We found nothing that night. False alarm. But the adrenaline didn't fade. Not for me, anyway. Back in the car, the silence felt different, thicker. I could still feel where his fingers had been on my skin. He caught me glancing at him once, and his jaw tightened. "You nervous around me, Collins?" "Just trying to learn," I said. He chuckled quietly. "You don't learn much by staring." I turned toward the window, embarrassed. But beneath his rough tone, I caught something else. Amusement, maybe even curiosity. When we finally got back to the station, it was nearly dawn. The locker room was empty, echoing with the hum of old pipes. I started to change, trying not to think about him. But then he appeared again, leaning against the doorway. "You did good tonight," he said, "even when I almost shot you." He smiled, a real one this time, especially then. "Shows you care." I laughed softly, unsure what to say. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of coffee and rain on his jacket. "Listen," he said, voice lower now, almost careful. "This job will try to break you. Don't let it. You've got something most cops lose early on, heart. Don't bury it to fit in." I blinked. That was the first time anyone in uniform had ever said something like that to me. "Thank you, Detective." He nodded once, then turned to leave. But before he reached the door, he paused. "And Collins, yeah?" He looked over his shoulder. "You don't have to be scared of me." I wanted to tell him I wasn't, that what I felt wasn't fear, but something far more confusing. But the words stuck in my throat. When he left, I sat on the bench, still in half my uniform, trying to process everything. The toughest cop in the city had just called me out. Not for my mistakes, but for my heart. And somehow that felt more dangerous than any gunfight. That night, as I drove home under the pink haze of sunrise, I caught myself smiling. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something deeper, something I didn't want to name. But I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to see him again, and I had no idea how much that simple wish was about to change everything. The following week, my rotation with Detective Rayner continued, and with every shift I learned two things. He never missed a detail, and he never let anyone get close. He treated every call like life and death, every decision like a chess move. The rest of the department respected him, but no one really knew him. He'd built walls around himself so high that even his shadow seemed careful not to cross them, but I'd started noticing the cracks. The way his voice softened when he spoke to victims. The way his eyes lingered on the city lights when the night got too quiet. It was strange how the man who seemed invincible on the outside carried so much silence within. One night, we were dispatched to a warehouse district downtown. The call was vague. Possible burglary in progress. 2 suspects armed. Standard procedure. But Rayner's shoulders stiffened the moment the address came over the radio. "What's wrong?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nothing, just stay close tonight." The air smelled like rust and rain when we arrived. The building loomed in the dark, a broken skeleton of concrete and steel. Rayner moved first, flashlight sweeping through the shadows. I followed, trying to match his calm, my nerves buzzing like live wires. We cleared the first floor quickly. Nothing but dust, rats, and echoes. Then we heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Rayner motioned for me to follow. We climbed carefully, guns drawn, the old staircase creaking beneath our boots. The air was thick with tension. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. When we reached the second floor, a door slammed somewhere ahead. Rayner raised a fist. "Stop!" I froze, trying to control my breathing. Then suddenly glass shattered. "Down!" he barked. A bullet tore through the wall, inches above my head. I hit the ground, my ears ringing. Rayner returned fire, his movements precise and fearless. He crouched beside me, shielding me with his arm as another shot whizzed past. "You good?" he shouted. "Yeah," I managed, though my hands were shaking. He gave me a quick glance, checking not just for injury but courage. Then he said, "Follow my lead." We moved in sync, clearing the corners, his voice calm, steady, the voice of someone who'd danced with danger before and learned not to flinch. We caught one of the suspects behind a stack of crates. Rayner disarmed him in seconds, slamming him against the wall with controlled force. The second suspect bolted toward the stairwell. I chased, adrenaline blurring everything. Halfway down the steps he turned and fired. The sound cracked through the building. Pain exploded in my shoulder. I stumbled, losing my grip on the railing. "Collins!" Rayner's voice echoed from above. Before I hit the floor, he was there, grabbing my vest, pulling me upright, his face pale under the flickering lights. "You're hit?" Just grazed, I breathed, wincing. He tore the sleeve of my uniform open, checking the wound with quick precision. His touch was rough but careful, his fingers warm against my skin. You're lucky. Bullet just scraped you. You'll live. He tore a strip from his own shirt sleeve and tied it around my arm. I couldn't help noticing the veins in his forearm, the scar near his wrist, the steadiness in his movements. He didn't look scared, just focused. Then his eyes met mine. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. You shouldn't have chased him alone, he said quietly. I know. Next time, wait for backup. You don't get points for dying brave. I smiled weakly. Yes, sir. He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally breaking. I told you not to sir me. Despite the pain, I laughed. And in that small, impossible moment, surrounded by broken glass, sirens approaching in the distance, I saw him soften again. By the time the uniforms arrived to process the scene, we'd cuffed both suspects and cleared the building. Rayner insisted on driving me to the hospital himself, even though the medics said it wasn't serious. The ride was quiet. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine and the rain pattering against the windshield. My arm throbbed under the bandage, but it wasn't what hurt the most. What hurt was the way he kept glancing at me, jaw tight, as if holding back something he couldn't say. At a red light, he finally spoke. You scared the hell out of me, rookie. I looked at him, surprised. Didn't think anything scared you. He smiled faintly. Plenty of things scare me. I just don't let them show. Like what? I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes stayed on the road. Losing people, I didn't respond. I didn't need to. When we reached the hospital, he walked me inside and waited through the checkup, ignoring every nurse who told him he didn't have to. When the doctor finally said I was clear to go, Rayner handed me my jacket and said, Come on. I'm not letting you walk home. The streets were quiet on the way back, that strange stillness after a storm. I watched him drive, the city lights sliding over his face. There was a small cut on his cheek from the fight, but he hadn't noticed. You saved my life, I said softly. He shrugged. That's my job. No, I said. You didn't have to risk it like that. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. You think I was going to let something happen to you? My chest tightened. There was a weight in his words. A truth neither of us was brave enough to touch. When he parked in front of my apartment, I hesitated before getting out. Thank you, I said again. He nodded once. Get some sleep, Collins. I opened the door but paused. You're not coming up? He looked at me then, really looked. The silence between us felt like a current, pulling tighter. Don't start something you can't finish, he said quietly. My pulse spiked. Who says I can't finish it? His eyes lingered on mine a second too long. Then he said, Good night, rookie. He drove off, leaving me standing in the rain, soaked and breathless. That night, as I undressed and caught sight of the fresh bandage on my arm, I realized something. I hadn't just survived the night. I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and somewhere out there, the toughest cop in the city was fighting the same battle I was. The one you can't win with a badge or a gun. The one that happens inside your chest. A week later, the department reassigned us together again. Temporary investigative support, the captain said. I didn't question it, but the look Rayner gave me said everything. He wasn't thrilled. Maybe he was trying to protect me. Maybe he was trying to protect himself. The case was a string of armed robberies across the East Side. 3 suspects, 1 getaway car, no solid leads. It was late fall, the kind of cold that seeped through the seams of your uniform. The precinct buzzed with frustration, long nights, bad coffee, and too many unanswered questions. Rayner and I were at our desks long after everyone else had gone home. The only light came from the desk lamp between us, throwing shadows over stacks of reports. He looked different under that dim glow, tired, human. Not the legend everyone whispered about, just a man. Whoever these guys are, he muttered, flipping through photos. They're organized. Look at this, same pattern every time. They hit places with weak security, strike fast, disappear before patrol even gets close. I leaned closer, scanning the images over his shoulder. So they're ex-military or cops? He looked at me surprised. You think? It fits, I said. Discipline, coordination, no panic under pressure. A small smile ghosted across his lips. "Not bad, rookie. Not bad," I said. "That's it?" He chuckled. "Don't get cocky." His laugh, it did something to me. It loosened the air. I didn't hear it often, and when I did, it felt like a rare reward. I found myself staring again at the small scar on his chin, the faint grey streaks near his temples, the way his forearm flexed when he turned a page. He noticed. "Of course he did. You keep looking at me like that," he said softly, "and I'm going to start thinking you want something." My heart skipped. I tried to play it off. "I want you to admit I'm right." He grinned, that dangerous half-smile. "You might be." For once, we went back to work, but the tension didn't fade. It built. Every glance, every pause felt heavier. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was electric. Around midnight, we drove out to check a possible lead. The air outside smelled of rain and gasoline, the city half asleep. Rayner parked near a shuttered pawnshop and killed the engine. "This is the pattern," he said. "Same setup as the last 2 hits." We waited. Hours passed. The only sounds were distant sirens and the rhythmic tapping of his fingers on the steering wheel. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Why'd you really become a cop?" I looked at him, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" He kept his eyes on the windshield. "You don't have that chip on your shoulder like most guys. You actually care. That usually means you've got a story." I hesitated. "My brother," I said finally. "He got caught up in something bad when I was younger. Drugs, wrong people. The cops who showed up that night treated him like trash, like he wasn't worth saving. I wanted to be different." He nodded slowly. "And where's he now?" "Rehab," I said. 2 years clean." Rayner looked at me for a long time. "Good for him." "Good for you." I wanted to ask about him. What made him this guarded, this untouchable? But before I could, movement flashed in the alley ahead. 2 figures, both carrying duffel bags, slipping through the shadows. Rayner's hand went to his gun. Showtime. We moved quickly, quietly. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the hoods of parked cars. The suspects broke into the pawnshop's back door. Rayner motioned for me to flank left. My heart raced. Inside, everything smelled like dust and metal. The beam of my flashlight caught their silhouettes near the counter, emptying drawers. Then one of them turned, eyes wide, and shouted, "Cops!" Chaos erupted. One bolted through the front. The other reached for a gun. I fired first, warning shot shattering a display case. The man dropped his weapon and dove behind a shelf. Rayner charged forward, tackling him hard. They crashed to the floor, the gun skidding across the tiles. I cuffed the suspect while Rayner caught his breath, rainwater dripping from his jacket. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, nice reflexes, Collins." "Thanks." We called for backup and waited in the drizzle outside. The glow from the shop window painted his face in amber light. His hair was soaked, his jaw clenched, his shirt clinging to his chest beneath the vest. I looked at him and thought, God, this man never stops fighting. When the uniforms took over the scene, we headed back to the car, both drenched, exhausted. The silence on the drive back was thick with everything we weren't saying. At a red light, I turned to him. "You were incredible in there," he smirked. "You make it sound like I don't do this every night." "That's not what I mean," I said. You don't just fight criminals. You fight the world, yourself, everything." He looked at me then, eyes searching mine. "Careful, rookie. You're starting to sound like you see through me." Maybe I do. The light turned green, but he didn't move. He just stared for another second, his expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make me forget why I built the walls in the first place." He hit the gas before I could answer. The car surging forward through the wet streets. Back at the precinct, we filed our reports and changed into dry clothes. Most of the other officers were gone, the building eerily quiet. As I packed my gear, I noticed Rayner standing by his locker, staring at the floor. "You ever wonder," he said suddenly, "why people like us end up in jobs that break us?" I tilted my head. "Because we're stubborn enough to think we can handle it?" He almost smiled. "Yeah, something like that." He turned to me then, closing the distance between us until I could see the rain still glistening on his neck. "You did good tonight," he said softly. "Better than most rookies I've had." Thanks, I whispered. The room felt too small. My chest ached. I wanted to tell him everything, how he'd started to matter more than the job, how every look from him made my pulse race. But before I could, he stepped back, the mask sliding back into place. Go home, Collins, he said quietly. Get some rest. Rayner, don't. He grabbed his jacket and left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with the sound of my own heartbeat. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying his words. Don't make me forget why I built the walls. He didn't realize it yet, but those walls were already starting to crack, and I was standing on the other side, waiting for him to let me in. The week after the pawnshop arrest blurred into a string of reports and sleepless nights. The press called Rayner a hero again, and he hated it. Every headline about the toughest detective in the city just built the walls higher. But behind closed doors, something between us had changed. We didn't talk about the rain-soaked ride home, or the way his hand had lingered when he wrapped my arm. We just worked, but every look lasted a little too long. Every silence felt heavier. On Thursday, a call came in about a missing teenager, a runaway, last seen near the waterfront. Rayner volunteered us immediately. It was late. The docks were empty, the air thick with fog. As we searched the warehouses, the night pressed down, cold and damp. Kid probably hopped a train, Rayner said. Still, we check everything. He walked ahead, flashlight cutting through the mist. I watched him move, steady, alert, every sense sharpened by years on the street. And yet, when he spoke, there was something softer in his tone. You ever think about leaving this job? I asked. Every day, he said. Then I remember the people who'd still need someone to show up. That's why you stay, he nodded. Someone has to. We found the boy an hour later, hiding under a pier, shivering and terrified. He'd run away from an abusive foster home. Rayner knelt beside him, his voice low, gentle. You're safe now, kid. No one's going to hurt you tonight. The way he said it, calm but full of something deeper, caught me off guard. The kid clung to him like a lifeline. I saw then that Rayner's walls weren't built from pride. They were built from pain. After we dropped the boy off at Child Services, we didn't drive back right away. Rayner parked near the river, staring at the water. The city lights flickered across his face, and for the first time he looked tired. Good work tonight, I said quietly. He gave a half smile. You did most of it. That's not true, he exhaled, rubbing a hand across his jaw. You ever get tired of pretending it doesn't get to you? The things we see. Every day, I said. But I can't let it show. He looked at me then, really looked. Yeah, I know that feeling. The silence stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable. The sound of the river filled the car. Then he said, barely above a whisper, You make it harder. I frowned. Harder? To keep the distance, he said. To pretend this job's the only thing I've got left. My chest tightened. I wanted to speak, but my voice wouldn't work. Rayner, he turned away, laughing bitterly. Forget it. No, I said. I don't want to forget it, he shook his head. You don't know what you're getting into. I've seen what happens when people find out. This department, this city, it eats people alive for less. I don't care. You should. I reached out before I could stop myself, touching his hand where it rested on the gear shift. He didn't move, didn't pull away. For a moment, the only thing between us was the sound of our breathing. Then he whispered, You shouldn't do that. Then tell me to stop, I said. He didn't. The next thing I knew, he leaned across the seat. The kiss wasn't soft or tentative. It was fierce, desperate, the kind of kiss that burns after months of denial. His hand gripped the back of my neck, mine tangled in his jacket. The world outside disappeared. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. Damn it, he said quietly. You were supposed to be safe from me. I don't want safe, I breathed. I want real. He closed his eyes as if fighting himself. Then he said, You don't understand. The last time I let someone in, he stopped, swallowing hard. What happened? He stared at the river. He was a cop too. Years ago, we were careful, thought no one knew, but someone did. Rumors spread. He couldn't handle it. One morning, he put his badge on his desk and walked out. Never came back. The air felt colder. You think I'd do that? I think everyone breaks eventually, he said softly. Even the strong ones. I shook my head. Then maybe it's time someone proved you wrong. For a moment he didn't move. Then he reached out, brushing a thumb across my cheek, a touch so gentle it almost hurt. You're too good for this life, Collins. Then don't make me choose between it and you. He didn't answer. He just started the engine, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Neither of us spoke the rest of the way back. At the precinct, the fluorescent lights felt too bright. He walked me to the lockers, keeping his distance now, his expression unreadable. When I turned to leave, he said quietly, "You know this can't happen again." I forced a smile. "Sure, whatever you say, Detective." He stepped closer, his jaw tightening. "I mean it." "Yeah," I said, my voice trembling. "You always do." I left before he could see the tears forming in my eyes. That night, lying awake, I could still feel his kiss. The weight of it, the honesty in it. It wasn't just attraction. It was a crack in the armor he'd worn for years. And I knew, no matter what he said, it wasn't over. Because you can't unsee the truth once you've looked it in the eye. And when I'd looked at Rainer, really looked, I saw a man who wanted to believe in something again, even if it scared him to death. The next morning, the precinct felt colder. Or maybe it was just me. Every sound, the buzz of the lights, the slam of lockers, the clack of boots on the tile, felt sharper, heavier. Rainer wasn't in yet, and I was grateful for it. I didn't know what I'd say if I saw him. The night before, replayed in my head like a film I couldn't turn off. The kiss, his words, the look in his eyes, right before he drove away. That mix of fear and longing that didn't belong to the man the city called unbreakable. When he finally walked in, hours later, the whole room shifted. He was different, stiffer, focused to the point of cruelty. He didn't glance in my direction, didn't acknowledge me. He just went straight to the captain's office. 10 minutes later, Donnelly called me in. He was standing by the blinds, the morning light cutting lines across his face. "Close the door, Collins." I obeyed, heart hammering. He turned, arms crossed. "You and Rainer, something you want to tell me?" The words hit like a punch. Sir?" He sighed. "Don't insult my intelligence. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. I see what's going on." I swallowed hard. "With respect, sir, it's not what you think." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Then you tell me what I'm supposed to think." I said nothing. He rubbed his temples. "You two are good cops, some of the best I've got. But whatever this is, it's going to blow up in your faces. The department doesn't handle this kind of thing well." "I know," I said quietly. "Then fix it," he snapped. "Before it ruins both of you." When I left his office, my stomach was in knots. I walked past Rainer without a word. He didn't look up. We didn't speak for 2 days. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. Late Friday night, we caught a call. Shots fired near the old shipyard. No backup close enough. Just us. The silence in the patrol car was suffocating. Rain lashed the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. The glow from the streetlights flashed across his face, revealing how tense he was. "You should have told me," I said finally. He didn't look at me. "Told you what?" "That Donnelly knew." He exhaled slowly. "Would it have changed anything?" "Yes," I said. "It would have made me feel like we were in this together." He clenched his jaw. "We're not. Not anymore." The words cut deeper than I expected. I turned toward the window, blinking hard. "You can lie to him, to them, but not to me. Collins, stop." "No. You think pushing me away protects me, but it doesn't. It just hurts." He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. "You don't understand what it's like being me. The things I've done, the things I've seen. If people find out, everything I've worked for goes up in flames. And you'd just be collateral." I looked at him, voice trembling. "Then maybe I'm willing to burn with you." The silence that followed was deafening. When we arrived at the shipyard, the rain had turned the ground into mud. Broken glass shimmered under the floodlights. We moved carefully, weapons drawn. Then to movement. A flash near one of the cargo containers. "Police!" Rainer shouted. Gunfire erupted. We ducked behind a truck. Bullets pinged against the metal. My pulse thundered in my ears. Rainer leaned out, returning fire. "2 suspects!" he yelled. "They're flanking left." I moved to cover him, the rain soaking through my vest. One suspect broke from cover, young, maybe 20, terrified. I aimed but hesitated. He wasn't shooting anymore. He was running. "Don't!" Rayner barked, but it was too late. The kid tripped on the slick ground. His gun slid away. I rushed forward to cuff him. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable click of a safety being released behind me. Collins! Before I could turn, Rayner was there, pushing me hard to the ground. A gunshot split the air. He grunted, stumbled, and went down. Time stopped. I crawled to him, my hands shaking. Blood spread across his shoulder, dark against the rain. "Rayner, stay with me." He groaned, his breath ragged. You're okay?" "Forget me," I said. "We need to stop the bleeding." I tore open his vest, pressing down hard. He winced but didn't push me away. The rain washed streaks of red across my hands. "Ambulance is on the way," I said, though my voice was breaking. "You're gonna be fine, do you hear me?" He tried to smile. "Told you not to chase heroes." "Shut up," I said, pressing harder. "Just stay with me." His hand found mine, gripping weakly. "If I don't make it, don't you dare." "Listen to me," he said, his voice fading. "You were right about everything. I built those walls because I was scared. Not of them, of feeling this again." My throat closed. "Then stop being scared." He looked at me, eyes glassy but fierce. "You make it sound easy, because it is," I said. "You just have to stop running." He chuckled weakly, the sound catching in his chest. "You never stop fighting, do you?" "Not when it matters." The sirens wailed in the distance. I held his hand until the paramedics arrived, refusing to move even when they pushed me aside. Hours later at the hospital, I sat in the waiting room, soaked and shivering. My uniform was ruined. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Donnelly arrived, still in his jacket, his expression grim. "How bad?" I asked. "He's stable," the captain said. "Bullet missed the artery by half an inch. If you hadn't been there..." He trailed off, sighing. "He's lucky," I laughed bitterly. "He doesn't believe in luck." Donnelly put a hand on my shoulder. "Get some rest, Collins. You look like hell." But I didn't leave. When they finally let me in, he was pale, asleep under the dim hospital light. The monitors beeped softly beside him. I stood there, watching his chest rise and fall, realizing how close I'd come to losing him. I reached for his hand, careful not to wake him. "You don't get to leave me," I whispered. "Not like this." His fingers twitched, and for a moment I thought I imagined it. Then his eyes opened. Hazy, tired, but alive. "Didn't think you'd still be here," he murmured. "Where else would I be?" He managed a small smile. "You really are stubborn." "Yeah," I said softly. "Guess I learned from the best." He closed his eyes again, and this time, when he fell asleep, I stayed. Because no matter what happened next, the rumors, the consequences, the fallout, I wasn't going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and quiet fear. I'd been there for 2 nights, sleeping in a chair that felt like concrete, running on bad coffee and adrenaline. Rayner's shoulder surgery had gone well, but he hadn't said much since waking up. Not about the shooting, not about us. When the nurses left the room, I sat beside his bed, pretending to read the case file Donnelly had dropped off. The truth was, I couldn't focus on a single word. I was waiting for him to speak first. "Still here," he said finally, voice rough from sleep. "Someone has to make sure you don't rip out your stitches trying to escape," I said, trying to smile. He smirked faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time." "Yeah, but this time you'd have to outrun me." He turned his head toward me, eyes tired but sharp. "You should be home, Collins." I shook my head. "Home's wherever you wake up alive." He stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. "You really don't make things easy." "That's not my job." His smirk faded. "No, your job was to listen when I told you to stay away." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "And yours was to keep pretending you didn't care." He looked away. "You think caring fixes anything?" "No," I said softly. "But hiding never saved anyone either." The silence between us thickened until it was almost a third person in the room. Finally he exhaled. "You could still walk away, you know, before this turns into something you can't undo." I stood, frustrated. "You got shot saving my life, Rayner. You think I'm walking away because it's inconvenient?" Because it's dangerous, he said. You think the guys at the precinct are going to just forget what they saw at the hospital? Donnelly's already covering for us more than he should. I don't care about them. Then care about your career. I care about you. That made him look at me. Really look. The tough cop mask slipped for just a second, and underneath it, I saw the man I'd glimpsed that night by the river. Scared, guarded, human. He swallowed hard. You shouldn't. Too late. We didn't speak after that. He closed his eyes, pretending to sleep, and I sat there, pretending not to notice the way his hand twitched toward mine before stopping halfway. The next morning, Donnelly showed up with coffee and the expression of a man who'd aged 10 years overnight. I pulled the reports, he said. IA's calling it a justified shoot. You're both cleared. I let out a shaky breath. That's good news, he didn't smile. Depends how you look at it. The rumor mill's spinning again. People saw you at the hospital. The way you looked at each other. Rayner stiffened in the bed. They can talk all they want. Nothing to say. Donnelly gave him a long, weary look. You sure about that? He didn't answer. The captain sighed. I've been around long enough to know when two people are fighting something bigger than the job. But whatever you do next, do it with your eyes open. The department can forgive a lot of things. This isn't one of them, he turned to me. And you, stop playing the martyr. If you're staying in this, you better be ready for the consequences. When he left, the room felt colder. Rayner looked at me. He's right, you know. I don't care. Yeah, you do, he said. You just don't want to admit it. I stood, pacing. So what, we just go back to pretending? Back to silence? He didn't answer right away. I'm not pretending, he said finally. I'm surviving. Something in me snapped. And what am I supposed to do? Watch you hide behind a badge for the rest of your life? Watch you drown in a job that won't even let you be yourself? He glared at me. You think you can fix me? No, I said quietly. I just want to stand beside you. The fight drained out of him. He leaned back against the pillow, eyes closed. You don't know how much that means. Then tell me. He opened his eyes, meeting mine. It means I wish I was brave enough to let you. 3 days later, they discharged him. Donnelly insisted he'd take time off, but everyone knew he wouldn't. He didn't know how to stop working. I drove him home, a small apartment overlooking the city skyline. Sparse, clean, impersonal. Like a hotel room that someone forgot to check out of. He limped inside, wincing with each step. I set his bag on the counter. You should rest, he nodded. You should go. I will, I said. After you stop pretending you're fine, he gave a quiet laugh. You're relentless. I'm consistent. He looked at me, then past me toward the window. You ever wonder what it would be like if things were different? If we didn't have to look over our shoulders all the time? All the time, I said. He took a deep breath, then finally spoke the words I'd been waiting for. I don't want to lose you. I stepped closer. Then don't. He hesitated for only a moment before reaching out. His hand brushed mine, then stayed. The city lights outside flickered across his face, softening the edges that the job had carved into him. This isn't going to be easy, he said. Nothing worth it ever is. He smiled faintly, then pulled me closer. The kiss was different this time, slower, steadier. Not born from adrenaline or fear, but from a choice, a decision. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. What now? I whispered. He chuckled softly. Now? We live our damn lives. The next day, we walked into the precinct together. Heads turned, whispers followed, but neither of us flinched. Rayner's arm was still in a sling, but his presence was the same, controlled, unshakable. Only now, there was something different in the way he stood beside me. Donnelly watched from his office window as we passed. He didn't say a word, but he didn't stop us either. For once, we didn't need his permission. That night after shift, we stood on the rooftop, watching the city spread out beneath us. Endless lights, endless noise, endless stories. Rayner turned to me. You know, for the first time in a long while, I don't feel like I'm pretending to be the man everyone expects. Who do you feel like? I asked. He smiled. Someone who finally stopped running. The wind carried his words into the night. I slipped my hand into his, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. We stood there, two cops, two men, two lives that had collided against every rule written to keep them apart. And somehow, standing in that chaos, everything felt right, because sometimes the bravest thing a man can do isn't to fight a war, it's to stop hiding from his heart. Courage doesn't always wear a badge or carry a gun. Sometimes it's just the quiet choice to love, even when the world says you shouldn't. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story might remind you what real bravery looks like.